an interview with Charlie Wetzel. Hello everyone, this is Hayato Uesugi, a Japanese editor, translator, writer, interviewer, and English and translation lecturer in Tokyo. With me online today is Charlie Wetzel, the author of the Marvel Studios story, How a Failing Comic Book Publisher Became a Hollywood Superhero. I have already published approximately 70 translated books, including most of Marvel's Avengers popular novelizations, Endgame, Infinity War, Spider-Man Far From Home, and many more, and all Star Wars stories from Episode 1 to Episode 9. It would be great for me to introduce you to your Japanese audience, especially big fans of Marvel and Avengers. Hello, Charlie. What prompted you to write this book, The Marvel Studios story, How a Failing Comic Book Publisher Became a Hollywood Superhero?
Well, HarperCollins leadership approached me and my wife about writing some books about some really interesting companies. And I was really attracted to Marvel Studios and was excited about doing that because I'm really a big movie lover and I've loved the Marvel movies, and I thought, I think there's a really interesting story to tell there.
Please let us know what was most enjoyable and most challenging for you in writing the Marvel Studios story.
Well, I really enjoyed learning about the backstory about Martin Goodman and the history of Marvel. Believe it or not, I was not a comic book reader growing up, but I was a movie fan. But I found the history really, really interesting, how it started from pulp magazines all the way back in the 30s, and then how it grew over the years. Stan Lee's involvement as an editor and a creative influence. So all of that I found really, really interesting. It was really, really challenging to write about the business takeovers and the fight for Marvel, and the business dealings and the bonds that they sold, and all of that financial difficulty that they went through, and the fights in the courts. Keeping track of that was really, really challenging, and trying to write about it in a clear and concise way that didn't lose people in the details was really difficult.
While translating the Marvel Studios story, I was always impressed with your writing skill. You succeeded to draw not only many fans of Marvel and Avengers, but also business managers who would like to develop their company. I believe many executives, especially those working for one of the oldest and most established companies that now need to consider changing them to fit with the times, can gain a great deal of enlightenment from your book. Could you explain how you think you have developed this style of writing?
Well, I've been a writer for 26 years, and most of my professional life I've been working with a leadership expert named John Maxwell. And he's often cited in the United States as being the top leadership influencer, and he's known internationally as well. So I've written a lot about business and leadership in partnership with him as his writer. So that's given me a lot of insights because I'm not naturally a business person. I majored in English at university, and I'm a writer by nature. But I've really been able to understand that. And I think because I'm not a business person by nature, it makes it easier for me to explain some of those principles in a way that are really simple and straightforward for people like me who don't have a financial background.
Why do you think Marvel and Avengers keep on attracting many people all over the world? We learned a lot about Marvel's business strategy from your book. Could you tell me what, in your opinion, is the biggest advantage or edge in the company?
Well, I think Marvel appeals to people because, first of all, the characters are so good. And this was an important thing as far as Marvel's perspective on telling their stories and doing comics. They wanted characters who were real, who had flaws, who had problems. I think Stan Lee said that they could use their superpowers to save the world, but they still had bad breath or acne or had problems with their girlfriends or at home. So I think that makes them really, really interesting. And I also think the stories are pretty epic. And if you have characters who are flawed and yet they do the right thing and they fight for doing the right things for people in need and for honor and for the greater good, I think that's very, very appealing. And I think the Marvel company has had that kind of a mindset where they believe in championing the underdog and advocating for causes. Marvel was early back in the '60s, having a black superhero, which was unusual, and one of the early comics that they did with Nick Fury had a racially diverse group in their platoon. So I think they've always been advocates for the greater good from their perspective. But I think that's going back to the Marvel Comics days. But I think with the Marvel Studios, they've just wanted to tell really, really, really good stories and do it with a sense of humor and with just kind of an epic battles. As well as the small interactions between people that are very, very human.
You have written more than 100 books. Wow! And you are now working for HarperCollins Leadership Series project, including the Spanx story. What's underneath the incredible success of Sarah Blakely's billion-dollar empire? Could you enlighten us about your career and let us know about your current projects?
Sure. So as I said, I've worked with John Maxwell for many years. I've written 3 books with Kevin Myers. The Spanx story is another interesting one. So when HarperCollins approached us, my wife took on the Spanx project. So you'll notice that both of the books are co-authored by Stephanie Wetzel and Charlie Wetzel. For Marvel, I did the writing on the stories of the story about Marvel Studios, and Stephanie edited me, and she's edited all of my work for the 26 years I've been a writer. For Spanx, she wrote that, and I edited her. But she has really, really good insight. The story of Sarah Blakely, who is the founder of Spanx, is really, really interesting. She's an interesting entrepreneur, and has a really interesting perspective on overcoming failure. And I think she was so determined. If she hadn't developed Spanx, she would have invented something and started a company, because I think she had a vision to do that. I'm working on 2 books right now, one with John Maxwell, one with Kevin Myers. I am currently writing a memoir about my culinary journey, or my relationship with food. I was a chef in my first career. I love cooking, and I'm hoping at the end of the year to get that written, and then I will go find a publisher for that. So Google my name in 2022, and maybe that book will be out.
After the outbreak of COVID-19, even the Avengers film releases, including Black Widow, were postponed. Many Avengers fans were so disappointed and frustrated with this situation, and really hope to see them as soon as possible. Could you give us your comment on that?
Yeah, I think COVID has kind of thrown everybody for a loop. Here in the U.S., we're trying to balance safety with not shutting down all business and industry. I think it's been tough for the film industry in particular, because at least here in the United States, movie theaters are not open, and they have tough choices to make. You know, do they release the film on video, as some have through Netflix and Apple Plus and Disney Plus? Do they wait to put them in theaters? And then, of course, there are challenges with filming. So I think it's a disappointment, but I think this is a temporary season, or at least I hope it is. And I hope that Marvel Studios will be producing things that we'll want to see here in the near future.
Finally, please give us your message for your Japanese readers.
Well, I'm a great admirer of Japanese culture. I practiced Aikido for 12 years until I had to stop due to injuries. I very much hope to get to visit your country one day. I have not been to Japan, but I would love to visit your beautiful country, see the sights, eat your food. But in the meantime, I would just say, domo arigato gozaimasu. Thank you for publishing the Marvel Studios story in Japanese.
I can't conclude this interview without showing my appreciation for you sparing your precious time with me for this interview. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to talk with you and to introduce great authors to the Japanese audience. Thank you very much, Charlie and Stephanie. どうもありがとうございます。